Welcome back to the Deep Dive, and thank you for joining us for Season 1, Episode 3. If you've ever looked at a friend's, decision-making and thought, are you running on corrupted firmware? Or maybe you've looked at your own habits and just wondering, why on earth did I do that? Then this deep dive is pretty much custom-tailored for you.
It really is. Our mission today is, well, it's highly personal, it's deeply humorous, and it's probably a little insulting to our entire species. We are diving into why the human mind, this miraculous, 3-pound chunk of fat, is fundamentally terrible at understanding probability, risk, and just the basic mathematical rules of life.
Yeah.
And we're going to use the insights from The Human Hallucination, Why Your Brain is Bad at Being Alive article on Substack, as our map. We're trying to figure out why our intuition, our gut feeling, so often leads us straight into a statistical disaster, even when it feels so emotionally right.
Exactly. We're sort of popping the hood on the hardware between our ears and facing this painful truth. While our brains are brilliant at metaphor and creativity and, remembering the lyrics to terrible 90s songs.
No, for sure.
They are, functionally illiterate when it comes to sophisticated math, especially when that math is trying to predict some kind of future threat.
And the author kicks this off with a really wonderful, almost bleak philosophical hook. It's this little anecdote about an AI, maybe circa 2035, talking to another AI and just diagnosing the human condition.
Yeah.
And the machine is observing our behavior, the gambling, the risk-taking, all these illogical choices. And it just concludes, you keep taking chances on things you have no chance of winning. And I'm starting to think you're illiterate in maths or even worse.
Yeah.
A human.
Ouch. Yeah, that's the machine's final verdict on 200,000 years of evolution. We're just mathematically challenged risk addicts.
It just sums up the problem perfectly, doesn't it? The AI looks at our objective reality and just sees chaos. We're addicted to being the outlier, to beating odds that are just so clearly stacked against us. It's why the author frames life as, and I love this, basically a giant casino where the dealer keeps changing the rules and pretending they didn't.
Right, and the odds are constantly, statistically getting against us, but we feel compelled to double down.
We do.
So why? Why are we even showing up at the table when we know the house always wins? The core of it is this evolutionary mismatch. Our brains are just running ancient software.
Yeah, software designed for a very different world. We didn't evolve to calculate, multivariate risk probabilities or understand statistical distributions. Our ancestors were solving immediate problems. Is that a tiger? Is this berry safe?
Right.
If you spent 10 minutes doing a detailed risk assessment on whether a lion was truly hungry, well, you were probably out of the gene pool pretty quick.
So survival prioritized speed. And heuristics, these quick, sort of imperfect rules of thumb over slow, accurate calculation.
Absolutely. The article even has this humorous counterfactual. It says, if humans were perfect probability calculators, we'd probably still be in caves, just paralyzed by the fear of any variable risk.
We'd be looking at the ceiling thinking, well, there's a 0.0001% chance of a collapse.
So that's too high. Exactly. Our ancestors wouldn't have migrated. They'd put and said, you know what? Let's just stick to eating moss. Moss is safe.
Moss doesn't fight back.
Moss doesn't fight back. It was our ability to ignore or, minimize that statistical noise and just act boldly. That was our evolutionary advantage. It's what allowed us to expand and hunt and innovate. We're not a cautious species. We're fundamentally a risk-taking species built on sort of willful mathematical ignorance, and then we act surprised when that confusion bites us.
And that lack of concern for the invisible, the non-immediate danger, that Windows 95 brain trying to process the complex algorithms of the modern world, that's what leaves us so incredibly vulnerable.
It is. It's that gap between what feels scary and what actually is dangerous. And closing that gap, or at least shining a light on it, that's the whole point of this deep dive.
And if this is already resonating with you, I strongly, strongly encourage you to check out The Human Hallucination, Why Your Brain is Bad at Being Alive article on Substack. The author's ability to synthesize these really complex ideas into approachable, often hilarious insights is just exactly what we need. So please consider subscribing to the About Something publication and supporting this kind of work with a paid subscription. Okay, let's move into our first major, tangible area where this mismatch just ruins our lives. How terribly we misjudge risk, this constant battle between, cinematic danger and statistical danger.
This is where you see our ancient fear programming just running wild. We fear the catastrophic, visually intense event, the stuff that makes for a great movie trailer, and we completely downplay or ignore the persistent routine risk that is statistically far more likely to kill us.
The Windows 95 brain, as the article puts it.
Exactly. It's running Windows 95 when it comes to comparisons.
The classic example, and this just demonstrates the failure perfectly, is the driving versus flying paradox. People who are terrified of flying but will happily commute an hour in heavy traffic every single day.
And statistically, the odds of dying per hour of travel are dramatically higher in a car. Dramatically. But the panic is real. And why? It's because we can visualize a plane crash.
Right. It's spectacular.
It's spectacular. It's completely out of our control. And when it fails absolutely.
I think you hit on it right there, that sense of control. When I'm driving, I feel like I can control the outcome. If a hazard appears, I can steer, I can brake. I'm the hero of my own commute.
Yes.
But when I'm strapped into seat 27A, the pilot is the hero, and I'm just cargo.
That control illusion is so powerful, and it completely overrides the cold, hard numbers. I mean, the author's description of cars is brutal, but it's totally accurate. Cars are basically metal lottery tickets, and we play that lottery twice a day, every day, and we just accept that tiny cumulative risk. We can't visualize the boring killer, the routine accident caused by a moment of distraction, but we can easily conjure up this image of a fireball after a plane engine explosion.
So we trade a high probability, low impact routine danger for a low probability, high impact spectacular danger, just because the spectacular one triggers our ancient runaway now alarm system.
It's the difference between death by 1,000 paper cuts, which we just ignore, and death by a single terrifying dragon, which we obsess over.
Which brings us to my favorite, the most beloved, counterintuitive comparison that just flips our whole risk map on its head. The apex predator swap. Sharks versus cows.
Sharks are, as the article so beautifully describes them, precision-engineered murder torpedoes.
Perfect.
They are designed to kill. They elicit this genuine primal fear, and globally, they kill about 5 people a year.
5. Meanwhile, cows, these 600-kilogram, slightly clumsy Roombas with anxiety.
The great description.
They kill around 20 to 30 people annually, which means, just in raw numbers, you are 6 times more likely to be killed by a cow than a shark.
The pasture, contrary to our intuition, is the real horror movie. Yeah. And it's hilarious because it's so anticlimactic. When people die from cows, it's usually, accidental crushing or a kick or a stampede. It's clumsy, boring death. But the statistical truth is undeniable.
Okay, but you have to provide the nuance here, which the article is careful to do. A lot of people will correctly point out, well, we spend a lot more time near cows than we do near sharks.
And that's the crucial context, of course. Per hour of exposure, a shark is clearly more dangerous. If you spend as much time swimming with sharks as a dairy farmer spends with cows, your risk profile would be radically different.
Sure.
But the point of the comparison isn't really about the cows or the sharks themselves.
It's about illustrating the failure of our risk assessment engine.
Exactly. Our brain have a perfect template for the shark, right? Thanks to movies and cultural reinforcement and evolutionary memory of apex predators. It has no template for death by bovine confusion.
No. We focus on the spectacle, and we ignore the volume.
And if you read even more evidence of this strange statistical blindness, just consider that common household appliances are in the mix. Toasters, for example, kill more people than sharks.
Yet we don't feel nervous reaching for the loaf of bread in the morning. We don't avoid the farm, and we definitely don't avoid our kitchen.
Because the world isn't linear. Simple, straight-line comparisons, they often fail to capture the real risk. Our intuition just insists the world should be linear. Terrifying things should kill us, and boring things should not. When the boring things become high-volume killers, our brain just throws up its hands and ignores the data.
So the ultimate takeaway here is that we're constantly prioritizing the dramatic and what we think we can control, and we're completely ignoring the cumulative, mundane dangers that are mathematically way more significant. We need to upgrade our Windows 95 brain.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. From tangible dangers to abstract chaos. If our brains are bad at judging physical risk, they are arguably even worse when they're faced with pure math and randomness. Our linear expectations are just constantly tricked by the true messiness of the universe.
This is where we have to confront the illusion that randomness looks fair. When we imagine true randomness, we picture this like perfect, even distribution, a perfect balance. But true randomness is inherently streaky and biased in ways that just defy our neat, ordered expectations.
The classic illustration is the coin flip illusion. If we flip a coin 100 times, our gut tells us the sequence should constantly alternate, heads, tails, or at least avoid long runs. If we saw a streak of 5 or 6 heads in a row, most people would start to call that suspicious. But statistically, in 100 random coin flips, You should absolutely expect a streak of at least 6 heads or tails and streaks of 10 or more. They happen surprisingly often. We're pattern-seeking machines. We're wired to detect order even where only chaos exists, and when we see natural, chaotic clustering, we erroneously label it as cheating or suspicion.
It's the gambler's fallacy in its purest form. This idea that because you've had a run of bad luck, you're due for a win. The coin has no memory of the last 10 flips. Every single flip is a 50-50 shot, but our emotional brain just insists on applying a human narrative to cold probability.
And this misunderstanding of streaks and clustering, it extends to all the complex systems that define modern life. The article references deeper concepts that just confirm the world is designed to defy our simple expectations.
Like Benford's law and Brace's paradox, these sound really technical, but they just beautifully illustrate how nonlinear the world is. Let's tackle Benford's law first. What is it, and why does it matter to our linear brain?
So, Benford's law describes the probability distribution of the first digit in many, many real-world sets of numbers. Our linear brain expects the numbers 1 through 9 to show up as the first digit roughly 11.1% of the time each, an even split. Benford's law proves that expectation is completely wrong.
Because the world is logarithmic, not linear.
Precisely. In real-world data like populations, river lengths, stock market values, financial transactions, the number 1 appears as the leading digit almost 30% of the time. The number 2 appears about 17% of the time, and it drops off steeply until 9 appears only about 4.6% of the time.
So if you were auditing a company and you saw their accounting data had a totally even distribution of first digits, that would be suspicious. Because real data in the natural world doesn't look evenly random.
It's a massive tool for detecting fraud, but it's also just this humbling demonstration that the math governing growth in the natural world operates on curves, not straight lines. Our linear brain is trying to fit a flat pattern onto a curved reality.
And Brace's paradox is just as counterintuitive. It shows that systems are interconnected and, well, often selfish.
Brace's paradox demonstrates that adding capacity to a congested network like building a new road in a city can sometimes make traffic congestion worse.
Wait, worse?
Worse. This happens because individuals make what are locally optimal or selfish choices. They all take the new, faster route, which globally destabilizes the system's equilibrium, leading to more overall travel time for everyone.
That flies in the face of all common sense. We think more road equals less traffic. The paradox says, nope, more road equals more opportunities for individual selfishness to ruin the system for everyone.
It proves that our simple linear assumption that cause and effect are proportionate is often just wrong in complex interconnected systems.
And this need for linearity bleeds into how we see ourselves relative to others. We move from abstract randomness to the concept of the average person.
Ah, yes, the statistical ghost. The average person is a construct. It's a useful point of reference, but almost certainly not a real human being.
Because the more traits you measure at the same time, the less likely anyone is to be perfectly average across the board. You might have average height, but above average income, a below average number of speeding tickets, and a completely bizarre, way above average love for experimental jazz.
Exactly. That's why the average person is so unlikely to exist when you combine multiple variables. The probability of hitting the median on, say, 10 or 20 different unrelated traits, it approaches zero very, very quickly.
But emotionally, we just ignore this statistical ghost because we're all protected by the better-than-average effect.
This is maybe the brain's most essential ego defense mechanism. Statistically, roughly half of us must be wrong when we claim to be an above-average driver, or a better-than-average boss, or a more moral person. But the author reminds us, emotionally, all of us were right.
Our brain has a built-in superiority complex. It has to. It's an essential energy-saving shortcut. If we had to confront the cold, median reality of our own mediocrity every single morning, we'd experience a total system collapse. We wouldn't even get out of bed.
And the Dunning-Kruger effect is often talked about as something separate, but I really see it as an extreme, specialized version of this. It's that protection mechanism just taken to an absurd degree.
Speaking of energy-saving shortcuts, that brings us beautifully into our next major section, cognitive biases. This is the entire suite of clever, lazy ways our brain just cheats its way through a day of processing trillions of bits of information.
And these aren't just quirks. They are predictable, replicable firmware errors. They are shortcuts that, while they're efficient for saving energy, they lead to these massive, predictable failures in logic and judgment.
Let's start with the one that affects our credit card balance the most, the price tag illusion. The undeniable power of the .99 ending.
This is just a textbook case of left-digit anchoring. When we see a price like 19.99 cents, our brain registers the 19 and immediately locks onto it. We ignore the 99 cents because our processing system is lazy and fast. We instinctively round down even though mathematically we should be rounding up.
The internal dialogue from the article captures this perfectly. Your brain says, it's basically 19. Your bank account screams, it's literally 20. And your brain, overriding all critical thought, just says, shut up, it's on sale.
And that feeling of getting a bargain, that little emotional hit, is potent enough to override the numerical reality. This small, systematic flaw is exploited relentlessly in retail.
Okay, moving from money to information, let's tackle the confidence heuristic. This one is a dangerous shortcut with huge societal implications.
This is the brain defaulting to confidence as a proxy for truth. If someone speaks with absolute certainty, loud volume, and unwavering conviction, our tired, overworked brains just take the path of least resistance. Processing the nuances of an argument is hard. Assessing the speaker's tone is easy.
So essentially, confidence beats accuracy, even if the content is complete nonsense.
It's why people trust the most emphatic, self-assured person in the room, even if they are demonstrably wrong. It's the engine that powers the rise of confident misinformation sellers, flat earthers, and loud online gurus. They recognize that certainty is a currency that our brain is just designed to accept as payment for truth.
And this connects right back to Dunning-Kruger, which is sort of the institutionalization of confident wrongness.
Yeah, Dunning-Kruger is that ironic phenomenon where the least qualified people, the ones who lack the competence to even assess their own skill level, often exhibit the highest levels of confidence. They don't know enough to realize how much they don't know. The author's observation is chilling. It's like evolution handed a megaphone to the guy who thinks Schrödinger was a DJ.
And because of the confidence heuristic, we listen to that guy. We have a system where the highest volume of certainty is often directly correlated with the lowest quality of information. It's a fundamentally flawed information pipeline.
We're just reliant on these cognitive free lunches. Being critically skeptical and fact-checking requires enormous metabolic energy. The confident speaker offers mental efficiency, and the brain, being an energy-saving device above all else, just accepts the easy answer.
And if confidence fails, there's always another trick: repetition. Which leads us to the illusory truth effect.
Hearing something repeatedly, even if it is completely false, significantly increases our belief that it's true. The brain interprets familiarity, the ease with which it processes that information, as a sign of correctness.
That's why ad jingles live rent-free in our heads, and why specific conspiracy theories stick, regardless of evidence. I mean, political campaigns and advertising agencies are built on this foundational knowledge that if you say something enough times, the effort required to reject it eventually outweighs the effort required to just accept it. Repetition equals truth in the tired brain.
And then there's the bias that most directly impacts our personal happiness, the negativity bias.
A pure survival mechanism that is just terrible for modern contentment. We are far more likely to remember negative comments, insults, or bad experiences than we are to recall positive ones.
Your brain is actively holding on to that one mean insult from 2006, keeping it flagged, highlighted, and stuck right at the top of the psychological pile. Meanwhile, when you try to recall the genuine, heartfelt compliments you got last week, your brain just returns no results found.
It's like trying to find a crucial work email in a messy Outlook inbox. The negative stuff is immediately accessible, while the positive stuff is buried under a mountain of junk.
Because ancestrally, remembering where the poisonous berries grew or where the predator stalked was literally life-saving. A compliment didn't save your life. A warning did. Our brain is designed as a threat detection system first and a happiness engine second.
And the final two biases just show how deeply linked our emotional and even our physical states are to our sense of truth. First, emotional certainty.
When you're angry, you feel right. Anger gives you this massive, albeit false, sense of conviction.
It acts like emotional steroids. When you're emotionally charged, your system prioritizes action over deliberation, giving you the illusion of absolute certainty. You might be wrong, but you're aggressively, unapologetically wrong, and you feel entirely justified.
Which is why online arguments are so intractable. Both sides are fueled by certainty derived from anger, not from facts.
And then the most physically absurd bias of all, the warm drink test.
The physical state literally dictates the judgment. Studies show that we're more likely to view someone as trustworthy, generous, and warm if we are holding a warm drink at the time we meet them.
And conversely, if we're holding a cold drink, we're subtly more likely to see that same person as cold, distant, untrustworthy.
Like they might steal my kidneys, yeah. Your brain is, as the article says, a thermostat with opinions.
Mm.
It connects physical warmth, the feeling of comfort, safety, nourishment, to emotional openness and reliability. It's a profound reminder that we are not rational, purely logical, calculating machines. We're biological systems where a hot coffee can literally influence whether or not you trust a potential business partner.
The more we dive into these shortcuts, the clearer it becomes that the human brain prioritizes feeling right and saving energy way over actually being right. Okay, we've covered the shortcuts, but now let's get into section 4. The mathematical truths that are so counterintuitive they actively refuse to stick in our heads. These are the stubborn truths that prove reality is just weirder than we think.
These are the ones that demonstrate that the laws of probability operate in ways that are just entirely counter to our linear, simple expectations. The first and most famous is the birthday paradox.
This one truly breaks your intuition. If you have 23 random people in a room, what's the chance that 2 of them share a birthday? Most people guess a small number, maybe 5 or 10%.
The actual chance is 50%, a coin flip. And the reason people struggle with this is they're calculating the chance of someone matching their specific birthday. The paradox calculates the chance of any 2 people matching any birthday in that group. And because the number of comparison points multiplies so quickly, the probability just scales non-linearly.
It's the difference between asking, does anyone have the same birthday as me, which has low odds, and does anyone in this room share a birthday with anyone else in this room?
Which has surprisingly high odds. Once you reach about 70 or 75 people, a shared birthday is virtually guaranteed. It just shows how quickly probabilities aggregate in a group, defying our instinct that they should scale slowly.
And if that doesn't mess with your perception of probability, the base rate fallacy certainly will. This is a critical failure in judgment that has huge, real-world consequences in medicine, law, everything.
The base rate fallacy is our tendency to ignore the prevalence, the base rate of an event, and instead focus only on the accuracy of the detection tool. This leads to massive overconfidence in positive results for rare events.
Okay, so let's use the scenario we touched on. A test for a rare condition that affects only 1 in 10,000 people. The test is 99% accurate, a fantastic, shiny number. But if we use this test on 10,000 people, what happens?
We have to walk through the math conceptually. Out of 10,000 people, only 1 person truly has the condition. That's your true positive. Now, look at the 9,999 people who don't have it. Since the test is 99% accurate, it will produce a false positive 1% of the time.
So 1% of 9,999 is roughly 100 false positives.
Exactly. So in that group of 10,000 people, you have 1 true positive and 100 false positives. The total number of positive test results is 101, but the probability that any given positive test result is actually correct is only 1 out of 101, or less than 1%.
Wow, so a 99% accurate test is wrong over 99% of the time when you're testing a population for a rare condition.
We prioritize the shiny number, the 99% accuracy of a boring contextual number, which is the 1 in 10,000 prevalence. Our brain is designed to simplify, and ignoring the base rate is a tragic simplification.
This is the danger of relying on headlines. The headline says test is 99% accurate. The fine print, the base rate, that tells the real story.
And when we move beyond these simple paradoxes to numbers that are truly incomprehensible, our brain just shuts down. Which brings us to the staggering vastness of chaos, exemplified by shuffling a deck of cards.
This is the point where the article notes our brain produces a Windows error noise, because the number is just too big to conceptualize. 52 cards in a deck. The number of possible orders is 52 factorial.
Which is 8.07 multiplied by 10 to the power of 67. That's an 8 followed by 67 zeros. To give you some physical context for that scale, if every single atom on Earth represented 1 possible arrangement, you still wouldn't have enough to represent all the possible card shuffles.
That is astronomical. It's impossible to hold that number in your mind and actually grasp it.
And the profound mind-bending implication is this. Almost every single shuffle you perform in your lifetime, every perfectly randomized deck you pick up, is sequence that has never existed before in the history of the universe.
You are literally more likely to hold a new universe in your hands than a repeat deck order. And when we're confronted with this scale of possibility, our brain can't compute the chaos, so it just does the only thing it knows how to do.
It generates the human hallucination. We feel like we understand the astronomical odds. We feel like we have a handle on the probability, but we don't. We're simply projecting a flawed, simplified reality onto the incomprehensible, which is why the author notes the irony. We're constantly mad at AI for hallucinating and producing flawed output, but humans do it constantly.
When we're angry or tired or faced with impossible math, we produce flawed judgments and we hallucinate certainty. We are, as the article concludes, biological chatbots with childhood trauma.
Which is why the machine is often the gatekeeper. We have robots asking us to please click the box to prove you are human, and half the time, based on our chaotic, mathematically illiterate input, the machine is judging us and saying, sorry, you failed. Try again, meatbag.
That is the perfect, bleak summation of our statistical frailty, and it sets the stage perfectly for our final section. The ultimate, statistically indefensible proof of human mathematical illiteracy, the lottery.
The lottery is the perfect case study because it encapsulates every single failure we've discussed. Ignoring base rates, succumbing to the cinematic fantasy, relying on the illusory truth effect, sacrificing statistical reality for emotional certainty. It's all there.
And the math is just brutal and unyielding. The reality is, if you buy one ticket every single week for 50 years, your odds of winning the jackpot barely move from effectively zero. The chance of winning remains infinitesimally small, yet millions participate with genuine hope.
The chance of dying on the way to the store to buy the ticket is statistically higher than your chance of winning that massive jackpot. The only guaranteed win is simply keeping your money in your pocket.
But let's move beyond the individual mathematical folly. The article raises a fascinating moral and social calculus that we rarely consider: the supervillain bet. The risk isn't just that you won't win, it's that someone else will, and that someone could be the worst person imaginable.
You have to consider the moral utility. If the chance of a saintly, philanthropic person winning is, say, 1 in 175 million, but the chance of an abusive sociopath, a dangerous criminal, or just a deeply aggressive idiot winning is 10 in 175 million, are you still betting?
But wait, let me push back on that a little bit. Isn't that moral calculus slightly flawed? The money, after all, generally goes to funding the school system or state infrastructure, depending on where you are. If I buy a ticket, I'm contributing to that social good regardless of who wins the jackpot. Isn't the social benefit of the tax better than worrying about the moral character of the single winner?
That's a fair point, but it pivots on the idea that the system is optimized for social good. The author argues that the system is optimized for psychological manipulation. You're correct that the tax revenues are beneficial, but by playing, you're contributing to a deeply flawed mechanism that concentrates chaos. You're subsidizing the possibility of the worst person you know receiving an unlimited budget for their worst impulses.
So by purchasing the ticket, I'm inadvertently sponsoring a supervillain's origin story rather than funding my own retirement. That's a heavy price for $1.
Exactly. And the irony is we excuse this massive moral and social gamble by calling it charity or funding education. The article calls it a genius piece of marketing. A regressive tax on the mathematically illiterate, framed as a gift to the school system. It is essentially chaos crowdfunding.
And this flawed design reveals our fundamental misunderstanding of utility and psychological impact. We create one massive, life-altering, and potentially life-ruining jackpot instead of focusing on distributed wealth.
We could take that billion-dollar jackpot and instead create 1,000 millionaires. That would stabilize entire communities, provide long-term economic uplift, and disperse the risk and psychological shock across a much larger, more resilient group.
Instead, we hand the entire bag to one lucky person who, statistically, is completely unequipped to handle the chaos that comes next.
Sudden wealth is a psychological earthquake that our ancient brains are just not built for. When people win, the immediate shock triggers impulsive spending, addiction, social isolation, and a heroic amount of truly terrible decisions. Your ancient brain says, we've defeated scarcity, we are gods now, let's behave accordingly. And they crash. It's not the money itself. It's the profound mismatch between our impulsive, primitive hardware and a modern, 9-figure windfall.
And the chaos is often immediate, starting with the anonymity gamble.
Which is a risk assessment all its own. Witness protection versus government-sponsored doxing. Some jurisdictions, like New Zealand, allow winners to remain anonymous because, as the author correctly observes, nothing says, please rob me, like posing with a giant novelty check for the evening news.
But if you win in certain U.S. states, like California, the rules often require your name be published. You've gone from an anonymous citizen to having your face on a virtual billboard for every stammer, criminal, and long-lost relative who suddenly remembers they were in your kindergarten class.
And the post-win chaos is legendary. The article provides these fascinating dark examples of how winning just gives your existing personal flaws a massive budget.
I remember the case of the Australian tradie in New Zealand who won $22 million. He immediately went on a speed run challenge for how fast can I ruin my life.
Precisely.
Ah!
He was a quiet, working-class man, and within months, he had leveraged his win to get himself into a police raid involving MDMA charges, unlicensed firearms, and a whole heap of new legal problems. The money didn't fix him, it just gave his underlying problems a massive director's cut budget.
Or the U.S. winner who hit the jackpot hundreds of millions and was arrested only days later.
Imagine achieving that pinnacle of wealth and still getting arrested within a week because a criminal past doesn't magically disappear when the numbers hit. That is peak human hallucination, the belief that external wealth can instantly overwrite deeply ingrained behavior.
And the most incredible part of this entire system is that there's absolutely no screening mechanism at the point of sale.
None whatsoever. There is no, "Are you a stable human being?" questionnaire at the counter. No. Do you plan to use this money for good, evil, or to buy a yacht shaped like a swan? We simply hand over the keys to unimaginable wealth and say, morality sold separately. Enjoy the chaos.
We contribute money that we statistically won't win to a pool that is statistically more likely to fund someone else's chaos than our success. The lottery is just the perfect concentrated microcosm of our mathematical illiteracy. So we've covered the ground. From cows and sharks to factorials and false certainty, what's the grand synthesis? What does this deep dive into the human hallucination ultimately teach us?
The core learning is that living itself is a constant gamble, and our biological hardware is, well, stubborn. We're running on corrupted, ancient firmware, constantly prioritizing speed and emotional comfort over statistical truth. We optimize for the wrong variables, the spectacular risk, the false certainty of confidence, the mathematical ghost of the average person.
And the only thing in life that is a statistical certainty is life itself and the fact that it will eventually end. The 100% chance we all face is the one thing we spend our entire lives trying to defer.
And the goal here isn't to magically change the astronomical odds of the universe. We can't stop the chaos. The point of understanding the flaws in our operating system is so that we can consciously change the bets we make. We need to stop taking the terrible bets subsidized by the confidence heuristic and the illusory truth effect. We have to acknowledge that our brain will always try to take the energy-saving shortcut, prioritizing the emotional feel of being right over the statistical probability of the truth.
And the clarity required to fight that biological impulse is precisely why we dove into The Human Hallucination, Why Your Brain is Bad at Being Alive article on Substack. It provides this phenomenal conceptual scaffolding to identify when your intuition is failing you and how those shortcuts are being relentlessly exploited.
This knowledge is your upgrade patch. It helps your Windows 95 brain run slightly better in a statistical age.
And so we leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over. The article ends by asking a brilliant, deeply cynical question. What are the chances you will finish this deep dive, understand all of these logical failures, and yet keep doing things exactly the same way you were doing before?
The answer is 1 in 1. The simulation repeats because the hardware is stubborn and the old habits are metabolically cheap. The real challenge of being an informed human is figuring out how to break that loop, how to force yourself out of the comfort zone of the average person, and how to conquer the emotional certainty of being wrong.
Thank you again for tuning in to Season 1, Episode 3 of The Deep Dive. If you enjoyed this analysis, please check out the author's phenomenal work and subscribe to the About Something publication on Substack. If you find value in these detailed insights, please consider taking out a paid subscription to support their future work and help us keep bringing this level of clarity to you.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the information you need to feel well-informed, despite the limitations of your biological hardware.
Until then, watch out for the cows and maybe try rounding up that price to the nearest dollar. You might just surprise your lazy brain.